Planetopin podcast. Dobar dan i dobrodošli u novu epizodu Planetopinog podcasta. Naš današnji gost, američki istraživački novinar i autor bestsellera Dah, James Nestor. Knjiga je prevedena na više od 30 jezika, 18 tjedana bila je na popisu najboljih knjiga New York Timesa. Američko društvo novinara i autora proglasilo je najboljom knjigom publicistike u 2020. godini. Jako smo sretni što je sada možemo čitati na hrvatskom jeziku u izdanju Planetopije, a pogotovo nas veseli što je James večeras, odnosno danas s nama ovdje i boravi u Zagrebu na svom proputovanju europskom turnejom i u Zagrebu će održati i predavanje. James je govorio na Medicinskom fakultetu Harvarda, Yale, Stanforda, UNA i sada u Zagrebu, što nam je posebna čast. Nakon ovog mog uvoda na hrvatskom, razgovor ćemo voditi na engleskom jeziku. So James, welcome to Planetopia podcast. It's wonderful to have you here as our guest.
Thanks a lot for having me.
So how did you become a journalist? Was it your childhood wish?
I had no idea I was going to become a journalist. I didn't set out to do that. I didn't study it in college. It was never part of a larger plan. It's just something that came about through coincidence, really, when I had a job after graduating from college. I got very interested in writing for magazines, but I never thought I could make a living writing for magazines. So I just did this in the nighttime and on weekends. And over several years of working a regular job as a copywriter, writing advertisements and other stuff like that, I finally got enough freelance work as a magazine writer that I cut the cord very late in life. So I don't recommend anyone take my path because it made it that much easier. If I had thought of this earlier on, I think things would have been a lot more of a smooth path for me to become an author and someone who spends his days and nights writing.
So both becoming journalist and becoming author was something that you never dreamed of or thought of that will be your path in life?
It really wasn't. I know that seems crazy, but I think when things happen organically, when they happen on their own accord, when you don't push them, when you are open to opportunities and then pursue those opportunities that really resonate with you, I think that can lead you into some interesting areas, and certainly led me into a very interesting and very different life than I had 20 years ago, 25 years ago.
It's when you let go and accept the unknown to happen and take over your life, and you don't resist, and then it takes off and brings you to wonderful places, as you said. But what did you want to be as a child?
I wasn't sure. I was really into music. So throughout high school, I was always in bands. I was in a punk band when I was 15 years old.
What was the name of the band?
The name of the band was Care Unit. And I know that seems very nice to people here, but that was actually the name of a recovery program that constantly ran commercials on television for people with very bad problems. They would go to this thing called the Care Unit, and that was the name of our band, and all of our parents hated it, which made us love it even more. And I've actually listened to some of those tapes when we were 15, and we were surprisingly good and extremely aggressive, which I guess is what 15-year-old boys growing up in Southern California are bred to do, be very loud and aggressive.
Now I wish we had a tape or a sound so we could hear Care Unit.
I don't know if that's ever going to see the light of day, actually.
Let's see. On the internet, everything might happen and pop up.
No.
No.
We all made an oath.
It's in a vault.
We're all professional people now, and we made a sacred oath.
How do you find writing for you? Is it easy for you? How do you write? During the night?
Well, I think since I was never formally trained to be a journalist, I developed my own very weird ways of writing, my only very weird ways and habits of researching. And I don't know if they're the most efficient ways, and I don't know if they would really pass muster in any journalism course, but they've worked for me, and I've found them through trial and error, not through reading a book, but just through experience. And I think that through experience is when you learn your most valuable lessons. There's a quote that I mentioned to you yesterday by Oscar Wilde, that nothing worth knowing can be taught. And I think that that's partly true.
Have you ever been using paper and pen or your own computer?
I started on a computer, and I do almost all my work on a computer, my editing work and processing work, but I am starting to go back to paper and pen because I'm so sick of sitting in front of a computer all day for everything. So when you're collecting ideas, when you're processing them, when you're trying to figure out what tangent to spend a few months on or a few years on, I think that that process feels a lot more natural and organic if you're writing things out. And so now I'm carrying around notebooks, writing things out, and I can't tell you how pleasant it is to be spending a few hours writing notes in a notebook rather than sitting in front of a screen and hurting my wrist even further.
That's great. I think a lot of people still like this feel, oh, you have it. So you can't see it, but James in front of him, he has a really lovely little notebook with yellowish, mustardish papers. It's really cool, and I see some drawings. So you took it to Zagreb for your research that we are not going to talk about much, but let's see. So just a little bit more about writing. Do you write during the night, or you don't mind whenever inspiration comes?
I think it's commendable when people have these schedules where they say they wake up at 5 a.m. and then they end writing at 10 a.m. and they do that every day, even on Christmas, even on Easter, even on their birthday. I think that's great. That is not me. That's not something I've ever done. When I get involved in a project, I'm thinking about it 24 hours a day. I'm often dreaming about it. My best thoughts are right before I go to sleep, which is why I go to sleep with a notepad right next to my bed. And I will wake up sometimes throughout the night when I'm really trying to figure out a story and write down the details. And that's when the big breakthroughs happen. I know that sounds very cliched, but I really believe when you think about something else, you can allow your subconscious thoughts to bubble up to the surface and then allow those thoughts to be processed into something that's hopefully helpful in your work.
Do you do some breathing exercises before writing? Especially now after you wrote this huge bestseller, Breath.
You know, I do them almost every morning. I'm not going to say every morning because that would be a lie. There's a few mornings that I miss them. So I will do them in the morning regardless. And writing is such a natural part of my day-to-day life. It's not like I sit down and say, okay, I'm writing a book now. Okay, I'm writing a book proposal. Okay, I'm writing a magazine article. It's just something that's flowing through everything that I do. So there isn't really a starting point to a book for me. There isn't like, oh, I started on this day and I ended
Page
on this
one.
day.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work. I know that works for other people, but that's not how it's worked for me, which also makes it really hard to finish books because I love the end process of a book where you've done all the work, a lot of the editing is done, everything's grouped together, the chapters are outlined, and then you just get to primp it and gloss it over and do the more subtle last touches on it. But that doesn't make editors very happy, and it makes publishers very angry because they're trying to get the book out the door. And you're saying, oh, I need another week. Oh, I need another month. I want to make this perfect. And they don't see it that way. So it's good to have deadlines. I know a lot of people complain about deadlines. I actually like them. It's a great way of being inspired. And the way I came to this job and doing this is from the corporate world. So I was used to taking orders and delivering stuff on time. And I think it's a great motivator.
What I love the best about being a journalist journalist who writes books?
There's too many things about it. There's a lot of things that aren't good, that you don't hear about, that aren't glamorous at all. And people oftentimes don't want to hear about that. They want to go to a writing workshop and dream about, sitting in cafes with a quill pen and an ascot and thinking philosophically about this or that. But a lot of it is just pretty grueling grunt work that goes on for years. I happen to love that. I like closing off the rest of the world and just becoming completely immersed in a subject. And you're creating your own world when you're writing a book, so you can inhabit that world and you can inhabit the worlds of the characters that are in that book as well, and try to see things through their eyes, which will allow you to better write about them. So that is something I haven't done for a couple of years, because the book process, publishing process, takes a very long time. And this book has been out for 15, 16 months, and a year before it was out, it was done and it was signed off on. So I am so looking forward to not answering email or text every 5 minutes and going back into that world. I miss it. Maybe I miss the control, but I also miss thinking about something else beyond politics and pandemics.
The process of writing this book lasted around 10 years, but you got interested in the idea almost 10 years ago. So is it usually like that? So the idea kind of ferments for such a long time, and it's very interesting for me to hear how you can keep your focus on a topic for such a long time. But on the other hand, it's not surprising when you read this book and you see what you have done and how many people you talk to and the research and the scientific things and the ancient wisdom of breathing and methods. There is a lot of work put into this book.
This was a very different arc to writing a book, where it usually goes that you find an idea or you uncover something and then you pitch the story to a publisher and then you go out and write the book. But this was something I wasn't consistently writing for 10 years, but the idea, the kernel of the idea started about 10 years ago when I was having personal experiences with breathing. Specifically, I was having breathing issues. I was having chronic respiratory issues. And even though I was considered very healthy, I was exercising all the time, eating all the right foods, sleeping 8 hours a night, all that stuff. But I was having a lot of breathing problems. I was told they were normal because everyone else had them. And that didn't seem right to me. And so I started experimenting with different breathing techniques on the advice of a doctor, and found that they were very beneficial in a number of ways. But as a journalist, I don't want to write about my own experiences. I don't want to write a memoir about breathing. That would be not something that I would want to spend years and years doing. And so I forgot about this subject. I won't say I forgot. I put it in the back of my mind for years. And I kept finding stories. I kept talking to people, hearing about all of these crazy things that breathing could do for your posture, for your facial development, for asthma, for COPD, for chronic sinusitis. On and on and on. But again, I didn't know what I was going to do with this story. And I thought maybe it would be a magazine story at one time, maybe 5,000 words, 6,000 words. But I wasn't sure until I saw freedivers. And these are people who had harnessed the art of breathing to do something that's supposed to be scientifically impossible. And they are doing it all the time. And so they were the ones who convinced me that there was a larger story to be told about breathing. And that experience was probably 8 years ago now. But the book writing, from the time I actually got the contract to finishing it, was about maybe 4.5 years. 4.5 years. And that was pretty full time. And it was really hard. This subject is so broad, which is great. You write about whatever, which is also a huge problem because you can write about whatever. So had to tell a story that felt like it was broad enough, but also specific enough to have an arc in it, a narrative in it, was a challenge. And I rewrote this book probably 4 times, 5 times. It was 3 times the size as it was. My editors kept saying, no, this is good, this is awful, don't do this. And over years and years. So you have to have a certain amount of commitment, actually not a lot of delusional commitment in the subject to do that. And this is the story that I was mentioning that a lot of people don't realize. They think that writing is, you just write it down, it's the first draft, you hand it in. Maybe that's the way it was for our ancestors, for Shakespeare, but it certainly isn't that way for me. And I really am jealous of the people who are able to do a first draft. I don't know anyone who's able to, but it's years and years of drafts over and over again, a lot of frustration until it starts to appear. And that's just part of the process. And I love that process, but I'm not saying it can be necessarily very easy.
And book touring, how is that for you? Because now you're currently on your European book tour. Finally, you came to Europe. You'll be here for quite a long time, yeah?
A number of years ago, I have several friends who are authors who published many books, very successful books. And we all belong to this place called the Writer's Grotto. And it was about 30 different offices. And you could exchange stories, advice with other authors. And when I was first starting out, this was such an important place for me to be. And I would hear these authors complain about having to go on book tour, complain about touring in the U.S. And then they say, oh, my God, I had to go all the way to England for a week. And I didn't get it because in my mind, I thought, that sounds amazing. You get to travel around, meet people. You get to talk about something you like, which is your work. Like, what's the problem with that? And until I actually did it, I realized that those people are complete idiots. I don't know if they've ever had an actual job because book touring is fantastic. I'm not saying every part of it is a total pleasure. Moving from place to place is kind of a pain, but I love it because it is an excuse to go to so many different places and talk to so many different people and that you wouldn't otherwise have access to. So I am grateful for it every single day I'm out here. It can be pretty exhausting sometimes. Yesterday I was pretty tired. But, you take that with a grain of salt and you look at the larger picture. So I could have answered that very quickly and just said book touring's great and we could have moved on. But instead you got that very long explanation. So
that's perfect. You're every podcaster's dream. Otherwise, it would be a problem. If you give me just one sentence answer, maybe
just saying yes or no the rest of the talk here. Yeah.
So to go back to breathing, you mentioned these crazy stories that you heard about breathing. First, when you met the free divers and doing things that usually people think they are not possible or they will cause brain damage. Can you share with us a few stories that really got you first amazed and then kind of questioned them whether they can be true? Are they true?
I found this website of a very poorly designed website. It had been built 15 years ago, hadn't been updated, about this guy named Carl Stow. And Stow was a choral conductor in the 1950s, very famous guy at the time. He would retrain singers how to sing better by training them how to exhale more. So a lot of us are concerned with inhaling air. A lot of us just go packing air on top of air, on top of air, on top of air. That's not an efficient way of breathing. You should exhale most of the air out first and then take a calm breath in. So by doing that, Stow was able to teach these singers who were already good singers to be great singers. And he went on to reteach singers at the Metropolitan Opera in New York City who were already pretty good singers, some of the best in the world. And he completely changed the way that they were able to adjust their volume, the resonance of their voices, all that. And he did this for years and years and years until he was asked by pulmonologists in hospitals on the East Coast to help people with emphysema. So, who are some of the worst breathers that you'll ever see. These are people who have such severely damaged lungs that they've compensated by breathing in this very dysfunctional way. And you can sometimes hear them breathing across the room. They go, their shoulders go up every time they breathe. And these people were left for dead, literally, in the hospitals. No one knew what to do with them. This was when smoking was very popular. A lot of people got emphysema because of that. So Stow went in with nothing else but his training and his knowledge of breathing. And with just that, he rehabilitated these people completely. These people left for dead, walked out of the hospital, and went on to live normal lives. So a lot of people may be saying, well, this is impossible. Where's the proof? Well, there's dozens and dozens of x-rays. There's films. There's interviews with pulmonologists. There's data sheets. He did this for 10 years in hospitals throughout the East Coast, and he was asked by the doctors to come in because he knew something about breathing that they didn't. And it's just interesting to see this person who developed something that obviously worked so well, and it was an ancient system of breathing that our ancestors had been practicing for hundreds, even thousands of years, that we'd forgotten. He refound it, taught people how to do it. It saved their lives. I've heard from some of these people. They've written me since the book has come out and said they wouldn't be alive without Carl Stow because they were left for dead in the hospital. So Carl Stow today, nobody's heard of him. Nobody's heard of his therapy. No one's asking questions about his therapy. Even though it worked, even though there is proof of how effective it was. So to find stories like this where something's discovered, it works incredibly well, and then when the person who discovers it dies, it's completely forgotten, and then the same thing is discovered somewhere else at a different time by a different person. It's named something else, but it's the same thing over and over and over. This cycle, I did not look for these stories in this book. Some people thought like I was just looking for these stories where something was found to work and then forgotten. And then every story I was researching followed this same exact arc. And most of these people, these pulmonauts, were ridiculed in their lifetimes, only to be celebrated by doctors and medical institutions, either when they were really old and poor, or when they were dead. And this is true for institutional scientists. Yandell Henderson, who was at Yale University for 35 years, same exact thing happened to him. Same thing happened with Konstantin Buteyko, Carl Stow, Katerina Schroth. I mean, it just goes on and on. So those stories were fascinating, and it kept me coming back for more because it was a treasure hunt to find other people who had discovered something that is measurable. Not just people saying, oh, it helped me, oh, I feel better, but it is scientific and it is measurable. And that's a lot of fun to dig that up and to find the few people who are now very old who still knew these people and to have an excuse to go out and talk with them. And they're very shocked when they get a call from someone because they were sure all of this was going to be completely forgotten. Wow. And that's very fun to be able to resurrect some of these stories and bring them to light.
How does it feel to be kind of a story keeper and knowing that it won't be dead and forgotten, but spread around the world as much as your book will be spread around the world? And in the intro, I've said it's translated into 30 languages and all of those stories are in your book. But how does it feel? And did you have this feeling when you discovered those stories that you want to share with other people, your friends and family? Hey, you know what? This is possible. I found out this and it can help, and it's proven, it's scientifically proven.
This probably isn't the answer you're expecting to hear, but it feels pretty frustrating to me.
Okay.
It doesn't feel like a celebration, and it's frustrating because I spent a lot of time making sure that the things I'm writing about are real and are measurable and actually work, because there is so much crap out there. There's crap online. on both sides of the argument, from medical institutions, there's a bunch of stuff that we know is wrong. They're still saying eat processed grains and, don't eat any fat. And we know this is so wrong. They say having sugar is fine, have cereal for breakfast. We know it's wrong. Yet some people continue to say that. And we also know on the other side, the pseudoscience community, some new age people find one little kernel of something that was proven and then exploit it in ways that don't make any sense. So it's a tough thing to walk between these communities. And I don't view what I do as walking in between them, but I view what I do as being open to listening to people and making sure things check out. So when I say finding this stuff is frustrating, it's frustrating because when you go out and interview someone and you see the x-rays and you talk to the patient and you see it works, then you come back and write about it and your editor says, this is complete BS. There's no way this can be true. And your agent says, oh, you're really falling for it right now. This is too weird. It's not true. Maybe they're doing that on purpose because it really gets me angry and it makes me more determined to go out and prove them wrong. And which is exactly what happened with this book. My editor, the reason I picked her is she was at NASA before she became a book editor, and she is one of the most conservative scientific editors. She's done all the top science books with doctors, and she works with people who aren't doctors, who aren't physicists, but I wanted somebody that critical. She did not believe anything that I was bringing to her until I had to keep bringing it back and keep bringing it back and keep bringing it back, and until she saw breathing respiratory problems with her infant son and went and talked to a doctor who told her exactly what I had told her. And then she started changing her mind about it. And now she's on board. She wouldn't put her name on this if this didn't check out 100% because her reputation's on it. But that process is, a lot of people, I don't view it as like, hey, I told you so. Hey, I'm right. It's frustrating that we live in a world where even when there is conclusive data on something, people still don't want to believe it because of some political slant. Either they're too conservative or they're too new agey. And that's not a way of moving science forward. And we need more real fact-based health information out now than we ever have. And it's as hard now to find it as it's ever been.
Wow, this is an impressive story. And makes me want to ask you two questions. Why do you think is so hard to change like the paradigms around health especially? And the other part of the question, sorry I'm asking such long questions, is when you were describing this process and you came to interview the people, the patients who had emphysema or any other disease and breathing exercises, the change of the breathing pattern helped them and they had proof. And then the editor says, oh no, it can't be in the book. Do you feel sort of obligation to fight for the people because they share their truth and they know they can back it up with so kind of you're the bearer of their truth to put in the book that will go worldwide?
I think the people don't care. They know it's worked for them. They know it saved their lives. They know it saved the lives of their loved ones. They've seen it. They've seen the measurements. They've felt it in their body every single day. They don't really care, and they're tired of trying to argue it. That's what I notice with a lot of them, which is why a lot of these stories don't percolate up, is because they just get tired of arguing with their family and friends who say what they've experienced is a placebo effect or what they've experienced is something else. It's not what it was intended to do. And so I think that if you're looking at why this information isn't more widely available to people, I think it is. It has been. It's just harder to find. And I think just what we were talking about, the previous question, is there's so much noise right now. No one knows who to believe on either side. And so it comes down to personal experience. Nothing worth knowing can be taught, right? You have to have a personal experience with it. And I think another thing with these simple techniques or these simple hacks you can do to your health that can benefit you, we also have to understand we're in a society that is motivated by profits. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm not saying it's a good thing. It's just what it is. It's really hard for companies to make money off of carrots and Whole
Breathing through your
Foods
nose.
and breathing
through your nose.
and cauliflower and broccoli, which is why whenever keto comes up or veganism comes up or paleo comes up, the foods we see from this are a paleo bar or a paleo shake or a paleo. But all of these things are related to the most simple things in nature, because the further away we move from nature, the sicker we get. This is not a woo-woo new age thing. This is simple biology. And the further away we move from natural foods, the sicker we will get. The further away we move from natural breathing, the sicker we will get. The further we move away from the natural movements that we would do throughout the day, the sicker we get. And so now the latest movement in health is to live in a modern environment, but to return to a natural state whenever you can, which is why healthy food is so big right now. Simple whole foods, because it works. It works wonderfully, which is why exercise is so beneficial. I mean, imagine if our ancestors saw us today with weights in our house that we pick up and we put down in the same place, and then we go for a walk on a treadmill. So we're walking without moving. They
Inside.
would think this is absolutely insane, but we all do it. Most of us do it every day. I'm a big fan of all that stuff. I do it as well. And in the back of my mind, I think, wow, things have gotten strange. But what all of that is doing is returning us in our natural state. We know this from hunter-gatherer cultures that are still there. They walk about 6-7 miles a day, every single day. It's about 10,000, 12,000 footsteps, So no matter how you get that, it's healthy. So I think breathing ties right into that, just the same with food and exercise.
Sometimes I feel like there is something about people don't trusting that simple can be the solution. We tend to go for complicated and then we give up because it's complicated, but we kind of more believe it's something is very elaborate and complicated and sometimes expensive. For sure it will work better. It's like breathing. How many times have you heard, oh really, you're going to write a book about breathing? I know how to breathe. Everyone breathes.
I think all you have to do is look at food again. I mean, think about how confusing it is to eat well now. There's diet books out, which are great. There's supplements. There's this, there's that. But what it comes on down to is your body just, what it wants is food in its natural state. But it's hard for us to get that, so we have to supplement with other things, which is very important. Yeah. Like vitamin D levels are so important. Vitamin C levels so important. But with breathing, so it goes, I think there's two things. It's really hard to make money off of breathing. I mean, it's something free, something we do all day long. Although a number of companies in San Francisco right now are developing products to make money off of breathing. And
workshops
I think these are products. Where the Apple Watch has a breathing sensor on it now. The Apple Watch does, that tells you how you're breathing and alerts you to. And if that can help people, that's a great thing.
Have they consulted you so they know it's important to breathe through your nose?
They're going to consult me. They're going to steal things from the book and then claim it as their own. This has already happened with 4 other apps, literally verbatim. the exact exercises in the book. These exercises don't belong to me.
Yeah.
Okay. I, as a journalist, I'm a filter for information. So, and what's in the book, I hope doesn't sound like my opinion. If it does, then I've failed. This is a culmination of what I've learned from leaders in the field. So these breathing exercises, many of them have been around for thousands of years. So I just happen to come across them and put them in a format that I hope is readable and understandable to people. But I don't own them. This app doesn't own them, even though they'll try to own them and patent these breathing techniques. Silicon Valley, that's where I live. So, that just blows by. But what it all comes down to, I think you nailed it, is that simple is not stupid. And a lot of us think that simple things, you need to have them be complicated in order for them to be worth your time. It's not true with exercise. It's not true with nutrition. It's definitely not true with sleep, and it's not true with breathing. The simplest things that you can do can have a transformative effect on your health.
I'm thinking about how we are talking about breathing, but not about the details from the book, because I want to leave it to the readers. I can, from my bottom of my heart, recommend this wonderful book, because I think the motivation goes very high up when you know why. Then you can take 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever time you can from your day. And time is precious, as we know, and we all have a lot of things to do, and it's hard to keep, as you talked at the beginning, to do it every day. So to get the attention to do it every day. But when you understand why, and you get really blown away by the stories in the book, and it's backed up by science, and there is a lot of stories about the ancient traditions that knew this stuff way before us. So we won't go into so many details from the book, but I will ask you, just for the listeners, to take something, let's say, practical away. I've just, let me open, I've put my little papers on a few pages. So one of the techniques that was celebrated by Dr. Andrew Weil, we talked about him, and several years ago we published his book, 8 Weeks to Optimal Health. We don't have it anymore, but we know the author. And said, so the breathing is 4-7-8. Can you tell us about that? Or you can pick any other exercise that you've described here, Tummo breathing, or I don't know, Sudarshan Kriya, whatever you want, but just, and then I'll ask you why exhaling is important.
When I was first looking at all of the books on breathing, I noticed that they were all focused on the techniques. If you get a book on pranayama, there's 400 different breathing techniques with all these crazy names, and they work great. These techniques work great. They've been around for a long time, and it's a technical skill doing these. You can't do them at random. You can't estimate. It's a precise methodology to interacting with each of these practices. But what was lacking from these books was, okay, what is happening to my body when I breathe this way? What's happening to my heart rate, my blood pressure, my hormones? Will this allow me to be better at athletic performance? Can it decrease my asthma? Where do these things come from? So all of that backstory was missing, and I could not find a book on that. There's books about how to breathe. Just as you mentioned, I could tell you in 5 seconds how to breathe. It'll change your life. But unless you breathe through your nose, breathe slowly, breathe light, and breathe deep. And that's it, people. That's the magic right there. And if you really do that, you will notice something fantastic happening to your body. You will calm your body down. If you breathe into a rate of about 5 to 6 seconds and out to 5 to 6 seconds very lightly, I should not be seeing you if you were sitting across from me breathing. It should be a very subtle act.
Do you see me now?
I saw you before, yeah. And I said, you're really going for it. As a good Westerner, you have to really kick your breath's ass. But this isn't something that should be approached like that. It should be very subtle and very light. Think about your body. This is probably a terrible example. I'm going to tell you it anyway. Like almost like driving a car. If you're driving a car and you're constantly have your pedal to the metal and you're at stop signs, you put it on your brake, then you're speeding up all the time and you're just revving the motor in neutral, that car is going to break down so much more quickly than if you treated that car very slowly and if you only used your momentum, the gas when you needed to. And so we breathe about 20,000, 25,000 times a day. Why would you want to overdo that? Why would you want to unnecessarily breathe more air or force yourself to breathe more over and over and over? It's ridiculous. And to think that that's not going to break down your body if you constantly do this in a dysfunctional way is crazy. It's like if you had a sprained toe and went and walked 10,000, 20,000 steps, your whole body, your knee would start to hurt, your hips would hurt, your back would hurt. And breathing is very similar in that way. So the 4-7-8 breathing, that was a very bad segue, but I'm just going to stick with it here. Is that every time you exhale, you relax your body. So right now you can put your hand on your heart if you want. You can just inhale to 3 and exhale to 8. And every time you inhale, you're going to feel your heart rate speed up. And when you exhale, you're going to feel it slow down. This is not a placebo effect. This is your body responding to your breath. This is how you control your nervous system. So with 4-7-8 breathing or any of these hundreds and hundreds of other practices, you exhale or you hold your breath longer than you inhale. What's going to happen if you're exhaling longer than you're inhaling? You're going to relax your body. And so 4-7-8 breathing, you inhale for 4, you hold for 7, you exhale for 8. You're either holding your breath or exhaling for 3/4 of the time. So you're going to relax yourself. So we'll try it right now just for fun. If you're driving, maybe don't do this because it might relax you too much, but we're going to inhale.
Especially don't close your eyes if you're driving.
Don't ever close your eyes while you're driving. Bad move. And save this for when you get home and you're on a sofa or you're on your bed or something. So you're going to inhale to 4. We're going to hold for 7. We're going to exhale for 8.
Do the count?
Okay. I will count for
Okay.
you. Not in Croatian. My numbers aren't very good. So inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Exhale very softly. The exhale should be slow and soft. Do one more time. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Exhale very softly through the nose if you can. Dr. Andrew Weil made that breathing practice famous. It's been viewed something like 5 million times. And so many people do it because it works. And if you don't trust your own body, all you have to do is get a heart rate variability sensor or a pulse oximeter or a blood pressure cuff, and you see what happens to you when you breathe that way. That's what I love about studying breathing is it's measurable and it's very easy to measure. And once you see those measurements, a lot of people need that to be convinced that something is real. I'm one of them. Once you see that, you say, oh my God, within 30 seconds, I got more relaxed than I've been in several days by just taking the time to control your breath.
There are several exercises explained in the book. So for all of you listening to us, you won't just get theoretical part, which is not even, I don't think theoretical. These are wonderful stories, really well written, but you will get also the practical part that everybody wants to know. But you mentioned something interesting, to trusting your body. Do you trust your body, especially now after dealing with topic that has such a huge influence on the body.
I absolutely do, because I've spent 15, almost 20 years researching various aspects of health. And I'd like to think I'm pretty tuned into how my body is feeling throughout the day. I know when I'm tired. I know when I have to take a break. I know when I have extra energy. I know if I've been eating the wrong foods. I know, and maybe part of this is getting old too. You just become a lot more sensitive to this stuff. So when I practice these breathing methods, I feel them affect me. And it's only after I feel that do I want to test them. I know that they're doing something, right? But again, my personal experience shouldn't mean anything to the reader. You need objective data for it to really resonate with people. And I think that's important. I wouldn't just trust someone if they said, oh, I did this worked for me. If that's in nutrition, because we know different diets work for different people at different times. And different breathing techniques are going to resonate with different people, different levels of exercise. So you have to be listening to your body. And I think that we're conditioned to always push off pain, to not listen to our bodies. I think that's just to be really aggressive in the world we live in now. I'm sleepy, I'm going to push through it. I'm not a wimp. I'm hungry, I'm going to push through it. And that's just not a good way of
Drink my
living
third
your
coffee.
life. Yeah.
Cafe,
Well,
yeah.
well, if you're in your 20s, you can get away with that just fine. But trust me, it catches up to you. So, and after a while, you get a little more comfortable with seeing what works for you and filtering the rest out.
What's the best feedback you got on your book? Or one that it's closest to your heart or made you feel like, okay, I really appreciate it. I'm thankful for it.
The best letters, and I've gotten probably hundreds, almost thousands of these, which has been wonderful. It's mostly from parents, I'll tell you the truth. Parents who have had kids who have been on 12 different drugs for a number of years, who are given drugs to stay awake in the day, who are given drugs to go to sleep at night, who are given drugs because they can't focus in class, who are given drugs because they're still wetting their beds when they're 10 or 12 years old, who were told 20 different incorrect things by 20 different people, and nobody had ever asked their kids about their breathing. Nobody had ever looked at their airways. No one had ever looked at their mouths. And a few of these people, I'm not saying this is going to work for everybody, but within about a week, their kids were having a massive transformation on every single level. Because especially for a kid, if you're developing very quickly, both your skeleton, your musculature, but your brain too, your body, if you are chronically stressed from improper breathing, if at night you're choking on yourself all night long for a third of your body, it will destroy your health. And no one's going to argue with that. I'll give you a name of 12 different sleep medicine researchers who have been saying this for decades. So I think it's those letters and those stories, and seeing how simple things, that it's not another drug they need to take. Oftentimes, it's not a new device. It's about tuning back into our most basic biological function. Because if you're not breathing right, I don't care what else you're doing, you are never going to be healthy. And the fact that kids aren't diagnosed, that they aren't looked at their breathing as the very first thing, is absolutely insane to me. Luckily, that's starting to change in a big way right now, at least in the U.S. And I think in 5 years, when a kid is 1.5, their airways are going to be inspected, because you can see at that time their chances of snoring and having sleep apnea later on in life. And that's a good thing. And sometimes this stuff takes a while to get through, and it definitely feels like the awareness in breathing. This doesn't have to do with me. It just has to do with this big wave that has been building for a long time now, for years and years and years, is finally starting to crest in some ways. And I think now more than ever, we need it.
if entire family can get even closer through breathing to support their kid, maybe they did the breathing of their own. So it's a wonderful way to connect to each other and kind of get together as a family around breathing. It's not, then it influences health on so many levels, but kind of gets the family even more together. I think that's a wonderful way to spend time.
It is, and kids love this stuff. I've spoken at so many schools, and they'll giggle at the beginning because it's a little goofy, and then you see this look on their faces after about 30 seconds where they're, in the back of their minds, I think they're thinking, holy, you know what? This is so powerful. And we can see what happens to the brain by just switching your breathing for a couple of minutes. More oxygenation, more areas of the brain come online. You're able to think more clearly. This has been done in dozens and dozens of studies. So when you give them these tools, when they're angry, do this. Before a test, do this. They really respond to that. And this is knowledge that they'll be able to carry with them their whole lives that they don't need to pay a subscription for. This is just standard stuff. And that's good to know that once you learn this stuff, a lot of it becomes habit. So you don't have to constantly be thinking about it. It just is working in the back of your mind. But you have to get to that point where you're a healthy breather first before it becomes a habit. And that can take a little while.
You've interviewed Wim Hof as well. Yeah, in your book. How was that for you?
Wim's an amazing guy. I think he's done more for breathing awareness than anyone has in the past 20 years. I think his feats are incredible, sitting in ice for 2 hours, running a marathon in bare feet and on the top of Everest, 26 world records.
Yeah.
Incredible stuff, but he's the first to admit his greatest feat is to teach people the power of their breathing to help heal themselves. And this would sound like total new age nonsense if there hadn't been scientific studies, if there hadn't been hundreds of thousands of people, especially with autoimmune issues, with multiple sclerosis, with psoriasis, with eczema, with even asthma, with heart, you name it, who have learned his breathing technique, who now know about cold exposure and have reversed these chronic problems. And again, this may seem crazy to people. Go read about it in the scientific papers, and go talk to these people and look at their data before and after. So I think his contribution and he's a great showman, right? It's a good thing he's not, trying to get us all to convert to some religion, because I think he would take over the world. His religion is breathing, and he's such a charismatic guy and a lot of fun. And I'm a huge fan of what he's done, and I love his breathwork technique too. I think it's wonderful. I did it 2 hours ago before we came here.
Really?
So yeah.
And cold showers? Baths?
Cold shower is something I'm working up to. That one's a little tough. I grew up in Southern California, so I'm doing everything else. I blast it cold on occasion. It's hard for me, I'll be honest. The breathing's very easy. I love it.
I'm thinking about two things. First, we're talking about breathing, and then how important it is to have clean, fresh air is something in general to think about. The importance and the right for everyone on this planet to have access to clean, fresh air. You can comment on it or not, but also something a little bit of the subject, but connected to it, and I hope I will be able to explain it well. Because we somewhere in a book at the beginning, I think you say on average how many inhales and exhales we have in life. And breath really is life. I came to think about how important the first breath in when we come to this earth and the last, how important it will be. And all in the middle, but first and last, there is something very powerful around that. Have you encountered or some, or felt even personally, some sort of spiritual element in the topic that you've researched, although it isn't in the book, and the book is about breath and how it improves our lives, but just about this like more spiritual or mystical, or however you want to respond to that.
I don't think it's a coincidence that for the ancient Hindus, their word for life energy was the same word for breath. And I don't think it's a coincidence that the word in Chinese, qi, means life energy as well. I don't think it's a coincidence. The same thing for the Greeks and for so many other cultures. In ancient Hebrew, ruach means spirit, life energy, and this goes on and on and on. So I think that you can talk about the spirit and think of what you want. What does that mean to you? It means different things for different people, but there is a spiritual element, because my understanding of ancient cultures, they were referring to the spirit as the vital energy that infuses everything, that animates everything. So it's fascinating. You look throughout all these cultures, they're saying the exact same thing, even though they probably didn't have contact with one another. They came to the same conclusions. You know, this desk that's in front of us right now has energy to it, but it has much less energy than a newborn puppy, which has a lot of energy. So if you look at the subatomic level, what I think the ancients were really talking about is what physicists refer to as electrons, or electron state, or the ability of electrons to exchange between atoms and molecules, and how that creates life, that creates different matter, different forms of animation. So you wouldn't call a physicist who explained electrons a spiritualist or a spiritual person, but they're saying the exact same thing, just in slightly different ways. So, you know, that's a touchy thing, what the spirit is, and that can really go off the rails, but it depends on how you view it, your level of science or philosophy. But it is comforting to know that people have been asking these same questions for thousands of years and have basically come to the same conclusions about even how breath relates to that life energy.
Unfortunately, we came to the end of our talk, because I would like to prolong it for a little bit longer. I have still a lot of questions.
I do too. I have tons of questions about breathing still after all of these years. So
I thought those you were going questions to ask me questions about
never.
Breathing.
Yeah, now we're going to flip roles. I'm going to put on my journalist hat, which I haven't done in a while, and I'm going to grill you. No, but the questions about breathing, they don't stop. I thought I had answered most of them, and I had at the time, but since the book has come out, so many doctors, so many scientists, so many physicists have contacted me and brought up more questions, and the conversation continues. That does not mean there will be a breath two. No, it will not happen. Maybe someone else will write that book. If I was a smart business person, maybe I would, but I'm not going to. So that's a long way of saying the questioning is good. Thinking about this stuff is good. No one's ever going to have all the answers. So just that process of thinking and questioning is beneficial.
Just as the process of correct way of breathing, which you are going to find out everything in James Nestor's book, Breath, or in Croatian, Dah. So James, thank you so much. This has been more than a pleasure. We've exchanged an hour of our time in our life to talk about something very important, and I only wish the best for your book to come to as many people, and yeah, they will get a lot of it from it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thanks for having me here in Croatia. It's been a wonderful time, beautiful place.
Hvala svima koji ste slušali ovu epizodu Planetopinog podcasta. Nadam se da ćete nas pratiti i dalje. Lijep pozdrav!